to kick off. So this morning we're going to be talking about the evolution of memorialisation and technology's role in shaping legacy and in-memory fundraising. So specifically, we're going to have a look at the role technology has played in online tributes, but over time, so particularly focusing on the last 2 decades, how online, so a bit of a history tour really, how online tribute pages have shifted the way people mourn and how they have become normal, how technology has allowed fundraisers to create a deeper connection directly with supporters, and finally, we'll be providing you with some tangible takeaways and actions. So before I get into it, I did want to let you know, make you aware that we'll be sharing a couple of live tribute examples. So if you do find the content difficult and you need some time, please feel free to take it. So just quick introductions. I'm joined today by my colleague Jackie. Jackie's an account manager at Much Loved, and she's been with us for 5 years. Prior to that, she worked for the Stroke Association, managing their remembrance funds for, I think, 9 years before joining us. And I've been at Much Loved since, well, a very long time anyway, let's not get into dates, but together we've got over 30 years of experience of working with tribute funds and supporting the bereaved. So firstly, I wanted to take a look at early trends of how people grieved. And the Victorian society had a fascination with death and remembrance. Memento mori is a Latin phrase meaning remember that you must die. And that was deeply ingrained in their culture. The era was marked by elaborate mourning customs and a societal preoccupation with death, largely due to high mortality rates from diseases. Victorians believed that acknowledging death was essential for a good death. Families commissioned photographs of the deceased, so they'd often be sort of posed peacefully as though they were sleeping. And also they were very into memorial jewellery, similar to what's available today, with rings, brooches and lockets, but often crafted out of the deceased's hair or engraved with dates. Now, the world wars changed things quite a lot. Millions of people died, and often they were anonymous, and families rarely saw the deceased. People weren't able to linger on grief, and it became more restrained, more elaborate mourning, more elaborate than the mourning that we saw in the Victorian era. It gave way to this sort of quiet remembrance. So I'm just going to stop because somebody said they can't see the slide. So perhaps if you can't see the slides, then leave and come back. But if anyone else can't see the slides, then please do let me know. And maybe I can stop. Oh, good here. Oh, good here. Okay, so whoever couldn't see the slides, maybe if you could leave and come back, and hopefully you'll be able to see them. Cool. So where was I? So yes, so world wars. Don't worry, Carolyn, don't worry about it. So world wars, that changed things. Millions of people died, and families weren't able to linger on the grief, and it became much more restrained. And that elaborate mourning that we saw gave way to the quiet remembrance. But public mourning was seen through state funerals, where public emotion was seen, but not channeled through ceremony and protocol. And in the 70s, there were examples of cultural mourning when Elvis Presley died, and fans created makeshift shrines and gathered at Graceland. And that's an early example of celebrity fan-driven, kind of emotional, personal public mourning. And we saw something similar with John Lennon's death through vigils in Central Park and across the world. So when Princess Diana died in 1997, that had a profound and lasting impact on public mourning. Millions of people did so openly. They left flowers and notes and personal tributes outside Kensington Palace and other memorial sites. And people engaged in acts of remembrance that went way beyond those traditional rituals, organising their own visuals and creating makeshift memorials. And perhaps you remember it, her funeral was very unusual. People lined the streets of London the whole way out, and again in Northampton, where she was buried. Her death helped to normalise public emotion, and it made it socially acceptable for people to mourn collectively and visibly. And there were also message boards that were hosted by a couple of media outlets at the time, and they became very informal grief hubs. The technology was starting to be developed for what we now recognise as tribute funds. So you might be interested to learn that muchloved.com, the domain, was registered in 1999, but there wouldn't have been any real take up if we'd launched it then, as technology wasn't really ready. Digital cameras were just emerging in the shops. Internet speeds were poor. People were using dial-ups, and it was expensive and unusual to have a home computer. And charities weren't really ready either. They didn't have the database infrastructure in place. They didn't have the right stewardship available, and they weren't really ready for digital fundraising in memory. To be fair, nor was society. And the thought of having a website for a dead person, and I can remember this, was met with an incredulous or blank face, because people just simply turned away and changed the subject. Now, it would be remiss of me not to tell you this, but Gone Too Soon were the first to launch in the UK, with Much Loved coming a couple of months later. Gone Too Soon aren't around anymore. And the image that you can see on this picture is the shot of René's tribute, which was one of the first pages created on our service that is still being used today. And around this time, there were some US sites starting out, but they were very basic in terms of functionality and design, and more of a kind of replica of a newspaper obituary listing rather than a tribute page. So in this period, we see charities like Motor Neuron Disease Association taking the plunge. And that one reason could have been due to John's Journey campaign. John Bell was a young man in his late 20s when he got diagnosed with the disease. He and his family allowed his deterioration to be photographed and then exhibited on the London Underground. And I can distinctly remember this campaign. John's journey went on to become an incredibly successful fundraising campaign that raised £230 and promoted £750 million worth of government investment into research. And people continued to donate long after John's death. So what you can see here is the very first billboard poster and the very last. And it was, you can imagine walking onto the tube station and on the tube line and seeing that. It was really impactful. This campaign had a huge effect on online giving at a time when digital fundraising was very much still emerging. There were other charities such as the NSPCC, RNLI, and Breakthrough Breast Cancer, which launched their own tribute funds around this time. And Our Lasting Tribute, run by Whitewater, who were a digital marketing agency, they first developed this Our Lasting Tribute product as an offline service and brought it online a couple of years later, which survived for a couple of years until Whitewater went into administration. And interestingly, missu.org.uk was run by Help for Hospices, now known as Hospice UK, and they created this fantastic platform that allowed people to create an online space to remember, to share memories and make donations. And this was part of a broader movement to digitise remembrance and fundraising like John's Journey. And it's interesting to see that the hospice movement was such early adopters of online memorialisation, but sadly, due to funding and a lack of take-up, it didn't stand the test of time and was quietly retired in 2014-ish. And then finally, this is a challenge which I'm sure that resonates with all of you, the 3 to 6 month rule, when fundraisers weren't allowed to communicate with supporters until at least 3 or sometimes 6 months after the bereavement. And it was around this time that charities started to explore the options of stewardship via email. But with those restrictions in place, it made it tricky to communicate, for communications to be more meaningful. So around now, we now start to see the usage of social media ramp up, in particular kind of YouTube and Facebook, and that really took off, with people more confident about putting personal content online. Much Loved had a community chat, and which we actually retired because there was no real need for it, because the social platforms sort of took up that mantle. And at the same time, we started to make Much Loved tribute pages automatically public, whereas originally they were set to private. Also, what we see is technology becoming much more affordable. So most families during this phase would have had broadband, and laptops were, accessible to people, and mobile phones. So I think it's something like 74% of household has access to broadband at this time, and smartphones went from 30% of UK adults having one to 60% owning one. Also, we saw charities really investing. Over 60 charities during this period signed up with us during these couple of years, and that's a significant update from previous years. And that was a real mixture of hospices, healthcare organisations, as well as loved in life charities. So just generally, people were becoming much more accepting of the concept of a tribute page. Within a family unit, you'd often have one person who was really keen on the idea. So part of this new social acceptance was also down to a change in behaviour at funerals, and people were moving away from giving flowers and making donations to the family's chosen charity instead. And the technology was really in place to make that happen now. So that lots of digital payment mechanisms, Google, Apple Pay, contactless, really improved and improved online payment processing through organisations such as Stripe and PayPal. And thanks to the technology in place by Google with their maps and payment platforms, that meant that online funeral notices, like we're seeing an example of here on this slide, would display well with interactive maps and provide a way for people to make online donations. So, as I've said, the image here shows an example of a much loved funeral notice, but there were others who entered the space around this time. So Memory Giving, which is owned by a funeral director, A.B. Walker, Funeral Guide, and Love to Donate, which we've since taken on. So by this stage, most of the funeral directors had some sort of way of collecting donations online. And then we also see the rise in direct cremations, or another way to describe these would be unattended funerals. So whilst these were already in existence, a modern adoption of them came into force around 2016 when Dignity launched their own direct cremation or unattended funeral service called Simplicity Cremation. And then you're likely to have heard of another one called Pure Cremations. So just for context, direct cremation is literally where the body goes directly to the crematorium, and there's no family and no friends, there's no ceremony, and then the family receive the ashes afterwards. So yeah, so there's two distinct services that offer that. There's lots of smaller companies as well, but there was quite a bigger an influx of it starting to happen around this period. And it was around the same time of David Bowie's death, and he famously opted for a direct cremation with no family or friends present. So without that physical service, families often seek alternative ways to honour the deceased and support causes they cared about. And online tribute pages provided a place for people to come together, even though through it's virtual, it plays a vital role, and it can create a talking point for when people actually do physically come together. So this was the start of the sort of technical innovation within the charity sector, and it also happens to be the time when Much Love launched their dedication pages, which was in 2018, and that provided another way for people to remember digitally. Charities' confidence in technology really started to grow and started to be very creative in the space. And there's a really lovely example of RNLI's direct marketing campaign, which is their launch in memory, where people get to leave the name of a loved one in the decal letters of the lifeboat, so the letters that are along the side. And within that campaign, they drove supporters to bespoke dedication page, life pages, where they could share the stories of the person on the lifeboat. So not only does that help to create a deeper connection between everybody who's being remembered, but also it enables RNLI to collect case studies, which they can use in promotional literature and on social promotion, which is very clever. Around the same time that Marie Curie launched their Memory Cloud facility, and again, it allowed multiple people to be remembered in one place. So charities really started to embrace this technology, and not just by using email to communicate with supporters, but also through social media channels such as Facebook fundraising campaigns. So this is like a dirty word, isn't it? The pandemic, but this massively technology sort of massively supported and helped charities through the pandemic, and particularly the innovation. They really had to think outside the box. I know everybody was losing income from physical events, but we saw pages like the Bolton Hospice 500 channel pop up on dedication pages, and people were doing challenges and sports activities and so on. And Facebook fundraising became a really critical channel for UK charities when in-person events weren't possible as well. There was also a significant change in the technology around funerals as well, with live streaming, and that really came into its own during this phase. So very interesting. That was originally started in the late 90s, but with a very simple kind of dial-up webcams, and to be honest, the technology wasn't really good enough. And then in 2014, two companies came into the UK, Obitus and Wesley Media, and they really got behind it. But again, society really wasn't quite ready for it. The pandemic hit, and all of a sudden we had no choice but to use it. And now pretty much every funeral is recorded. And QR codes are a little bit similar. That was technology that almost seemed to kind of come and go. And then the pandemic happened, and then that just, QR codes became commonplace. We couldn't have ordered in a restaurant or a pub without using one. And at the same time, tribute pages have become a fundamental part of funerals. So the pandemic really catapulted them into the public domain and has really helped them to become normalised. So before I hand you over to Jackie, I just wanted to show you over the last 15 years that we've seen such a huge growth in the use of tribute pages, and that they're becoming much, much more commonplace.
Thanks, Ali, and that's really interesting to hear the background, to know the history of where we've ended up with the technology and how quickly it's developed, especially in this last decade. But before I go on and share my tribute pages with you, I just wanted to share this graph, which I found really interesting. It's about user engagement. So basically how people will interact with their tribute page. And I found this analysis of this slide really interesting. And I'm sure we've got many fundraisers on this webinar, so I thought you might too, which is why I'm sharing it. You'll notice that this tribute, the graph, it bobs along, and then we have these spikes, and they're quite significant spikes. So did a bit of analysis and a bit more of a deep dive of those spikes to see what was happening. And without fail, everyone coincides with the anniversary. So the interaction could be that somebody added a candle, left a message, remembered the fact it was an anniversary. It's not always about the donation, but you can see that even after 5 years, that interaction is still at 50%. But the real point here is that it was the technology that enabled the tribute page creation, and the fact that friends and families are still sharing memories and keeping a connection to charities really just show that tribute pages are definitely here to stay. So I can only give you the stats from the Much Love perspective. But this figure is absolutely continuing to increase and grow. So we've seen a massive increase in tribute pages being set up. In fact, on average, there are over 300 Much Love tribute pages created every day. And actually, because I knew I was doing this webinar, I've been keeping a track of the figures. And actually, that figure is increasing, and probably we're nearly at 400 pages per day. So that's amazing. But then 2 in 4 stat is also interesting. All those people who in on this call who likes the stats. These people we know are sharing their tribute pages on their social media channels. And it might be that they haven't even got a tribute page, or they don't even know really what a tribute page is. But it definitely shows that there is an appetite for people to do this. because we all know that a tribute page is a place for memories, but it's also a bereavement tool for family and friends. It is that place of comfort, and then it does keep them connected to the charity who may be featured in the life of their loved one. And we know this because that stat is telling us that 2 in 4 of online tribute pages are shared via social media channels. So that technology really is the enabler in this space. So sadly, behind all the growth, stats and development, the most important emotion or connection is to remember there is a person who makes up one of these statistics. So I'm just going to share a couple of tributes which show really how the tribute pages have brought together online communities through all the different digital channels. So this is Nikki Newman's tribute page. So Nikki shared her cancer story on her Instant page. You'd probably describe her today in today's world as an influencer. She gained a huge following on all her socials. She shared all her aspirations and kept telling people to grab life. And this really resonated, not just with people in the UK, but all over the world. She really was a global influencer. In fact, Nikki had a lightning bolt tattoo, which many supporters copied. Nikki actually supported and had lots of support from many charities during her cancer journey. After Nikki's death, her husband created her tribute page, and the funeral was a really private family service. But her husband added every detail of the funeral using the order of service so that visitors to Nikki's tribute page really did feel they were there. Nikki's tribute has had contributions from people all over the world, from people who've never even met her. And actually, Nikki's family did let us know that they were so overwhelmed by the messages and they really felt truly loved. Much Loved also added the lightning bolt gift to Nikki's tribute page so that people could include this alongside their messages. So this page really was a bereavement support tool. We know families reread and interact with their tribute long after the funeral, often finding the messages of comfort later down the line when they're not so overwhelmed when dealing with everything at the time of death. So just thought I'd just say tribute technology has progressed so much. So without the tribute page, would Nikki's connection have continued after her death? I suspect not. Her husband continues to stay connected, and people who didn't even know her are connected to her chosen charities. This wouldn't have happened without the tribute connection. People who didn't even know Nikki are still fundraising. So what a remarkable legacy this is for Nikki's family. Much Loved has so many lovely charity partners, with the average tribute fund page now raising over £1,300 for their chosen charity. So following on from these tribute pages, we know that they really do help create deeper connections between the charity and the fundraiser. So I've just got a little quote here from Amanda Taylor, who is the in memory supporter care manager at St Leonard's Hospice. They've been a partner of Much Love's now for a couple of years, and I just wanted to highlight a couple of key words from Amanda's quote. She often refers to Much Love tribute pages as online memory boxes, and they've had an amazing event. There was a family raising money for some cuddle beds at the hospice, and at the same time, sadly, a gentleman called Gary Burton passed away, but his family really wanted to carry on raising money for these cuddle beds, so they devised a bed push event. And so when he died, they raised the money and managed to get another cuddle bed. But the amazing thing is that the colossal bed push was born. So what a fantastic event, and still going to this day. So how do we create a deeper connection? Why are tributes the enabler to create a deeper connection? This can mean different things for so many of us. For example, it can mean the connection between the tribute guardian and visitors to the tribute page, or between the tribute guardian and the actual charity. Well, our learnings in the online tribute space, some much loved tribute pages are still going after 20 years, but most importantly, they're still active. So deeper connection really is longevity. To give you an example, I'm just going to give you a quick story about James Brockenshire's and how his tribute page truly has created a deeper connection with the charity it's supporting, which is the Roy Castle Lung Cancer. James was a non-smoker, so it's a complete and absolute shock when was diagnosed with lung cancer. The family wanted to support Roy Castle Lung Cancer Foundation to really promote the message that you don't need to be a smoker to die of this disease. So that was the initial reason James's wife Kathy set up the online tribute page. So Angela Massey's the digital fundraising page there, really built up a great relationship with James's wife, Kathy. In fact, Kathy is now a trustee for the charity. And Angela obviously gave us a little quote as well, but she said the most important thing that she found was the pages offer comfort and the connection. So, you know, you can build relationships with the family and they become real ambassadors for your charity. The thing that Kathy loved about James' tribute page, a bit like Nikki's family, is that she read stories about James that she didn't even know about. People were sharing their stories, their memories of James. She couldn't believe, and as a family, their page really gave them a great source of comfort as well as great strength. The online technology gave Kathy the initial platform to create James's tribute page, which gave her a place to record all the memories and lots of fundraising events, which lots of different people have done. It enabled it to go to the wider community that Kathy wasn't even aware about. She's not only visible actually in the online space, she's done lots of TV and radio interviews, always promoting James' tribute page and the charity and the fantastic work they do. So this really is truly a deeper example of the deeper connection that a page can help between you and the family. Whilst I was working at the Stroke Association, I took a call from a lovely guy, Dean Wolf, whose wife, Tina, had suddenly died from a stroke. Spookingly, this was a bit of a strange story because they had only literally spoken about death a couple of weeks before this sad event happened to Tina, and they'd, in a sort of almost throwaway line, had said that they would help raise money for whatever charity was associated with their respective deaths. Obviously, in this case, it was a stroke for Tina, but it was such a shock that family and friends soon got involved in fundraising for the charity. And at the time, the Stroke Association were revamping their in-mem pages, a bit like Sally was saying, that there was a lot more investment on online online in-mem charity and tribute pages that charities were investing on. So the result was I was sent along to Dean's house along with the Strokes in-house video man to hear about Dean's story about why they were supporting the Stroke Association in memory of Tina. And it was such a privilege to hear about Tina and how Dean wanted to help raise money for research to help prevent stroke. They really were a motivated family. The family was added to Stroke's websites and used to highlight in-mem fundraising internally as well. And I've often seen this approach taken by many charities. It's a great idea to resonate with other families that sadly find themselves in the same situation. So Dean's tribute page really connected him with the Stroke Association while helping him through his bereavement journey. Technology enabled this to happen, and it still has an impact for Dean and his family 10 years on from Tina's death. So again, another real true legacy. So I just want to give you guys some takeaways. So we've seen how tributes have transformed through technology advances over the years, from moving from that private to that public space. Public is now normal. We can all access these tribute pages and share memories. in a very public space. We've shown there is a deep history. Tributes aren't a fad, they're not going away. As mentioned, 1 in 4 people now have a tribute page. So there's no need for you to be an innovator. Technology is already in place. There's lots of platforms for you to choose from. You've everything in one place. You have this technology to progress your online in memoriam offering. And the final point, and it really is a big area opportunity for your charity, make sure you're offering your supporters the chance to remember in this way by providing the vehicle, the space, the platform, whatever you want to call it, to share memories and fundraise if they choose. Be clear on your websites. I mean, do you even know where your in memoriam offering is on your website? Is it up to date? Have you got the latest stories? Have you got the latest dedication page, or are you sharing an old one? Really keep it up to date. Everything's at your fingertips. Once you've done that piece of work, they really will look after themselves. Tribute pages aren't going anywhere, no matter which platform or funeral director the tribute page is created by. So you've got the technology, so make sure that you're using it to maximize all the opportunities. So questions and answers. I think I did see a little question pop into the box. Let's have a quick look.
Yeah, there's a question from Rachel. The 1,300 average fundraiser page you mentioned, that's higher than we would class as in mem. Does that figure include tribute funds? Yeah, shall I let you answer that, Jackie?
Yeah, you can. So may I say we're doing anything better? Could we do more with FD? So yes, actually, building your relationships if you have the opportunity. I don't know where you're from, Rachel, but like a lot of hospice have these funeral director days where they will invite the funeral directors into their hospices. They'll try and build relationships with them, let them know that, you know, they're also on the Much Loved platform. Is there any way that they can let their families know as well that the tribute pages are, you know, are there as well? There's lots of many stewardship tips we have. We've got a whole raft of webinars that our partners have participated in, where they'll share their learnings, what worked well for them, what didn't, and we've all got access to those in the charity support site. So we have got lots of way to help you increase your in-mem offering to supporters. Does that help? Does that give you an idea?
Thank you, Jackie. Yeah, Rachel's from the Hope Rescue Dog charity in South Wales. We can also get in touch with you directly if you like, Rachel, and just maybe highlight some of the resources that we have available so that you can have a look. But just to make it clear, that average value that we've commented on is just from Much Love tribute pages.
Yes. So, and Rachel, just so you know, we have lots of Loved in Life charities, which is what we would name, you know, label your charity has, because it's a Loved in Life charity that you don't die from the course of rescuing a dog. And we have lots of charity partners on board, like Guide Dogs, Dogs Trust, so we can definitely share some of their learnings as well. Yeah, we always share the slides. We will make them available in the charity support site, and account managers normally message out to all our partners with the webinar link.
And then there's just one other question so far, unless some others crop in, but from Rosie from Sussex Community NHS Foundation Trust. So yeah, I can I'll run through them briefly now, just in case there's anybody else on here that is also on the free service. But if you upgrade to we've got 2 different subscription-based partnerships. We've got one that is Advantage, and that's just £720 per annum. And then we have an Optimum service, which is £1,600 per annum, and then has a setup fee. So both services would give you access to be able to offer your own tribute fund service directly to your supporters. So you can put links, or if you go with the Optimum service, then you can add bespoke widgets, and then people can create their tributes directly through there. So you get the opportunity to offer people to set up tribute pages, but also a tribute page with funeral information on them as well. You would also get access to reports, so you'd get access to be able to see what's happening on your account or through the tributes that are being created directly through your own service, or maybe tribute pages being created through our funeral director partners, of which there are 2,500 different funeral director branches across the UK creating tribute pages for all kinds of different organisations. You'd also get access to alerts. So each time there's activity, and there's a whole raft of different alerts that you could choose to subscribe to. We have things like an API integration. So depending on what database that you're using, it could be possible that you could link directly into that. That's kind of the sort of core differences between, and you'd also get access to dedication pages, which I mentioned earlier in the presentation. So there's a whole raft of different templates that you can use for dedication pages, and you can also choose to have your own bespoke one for a small additional fee as well. And then the Optimum service, it's probably a bit complicated to go into directly from now, but essentially it's the same, but on steroids. So you get much clearer kind of stewardship access. You can light candles, leave virtual gifts, display your own virtual gifts, that kind of thing. And you can have customized references. There's a whole raft of different things, but Jackie or I or any of the other team would be really happy to speak directly to anyone who's interested. We can give you a demonstration. There's no obligation to take it forwards if you don't want to, but we're very happy to give you some of our time to talk it through in detail.
That's brilliant, thanks. And I can see we've got another question from Stephen about how we can share any learnings about faith-based charities. Well, funnily enough, we're doing quite a big piece of work about this, Stephen, at the moment, and we have got somebody liaising with different faith communities. So watch this space, because we're definitely progressing in that area.
Great. Okay, well, if there aren't, I'll give it a second just in case there's any other questions popping up. But if Sharon, Rosie, and Carolyn will get in touch directly to give you the opportunity to have a more sort of detailed demonstration of our service. And we will make sure that there is a copy of the recording of this session available on the support site. Will probably be early next week. So last question from Nadine around regular giving. Yeah, I would say that perhaps, so for those of you that don't know, we launched regular giving on the service a few months ago. So giving people the option when they make a donation to choose to give a single donation or to give an amount regularly. It's slow and steady, I would say, and actually that's as we expected it would be. We expected it to take time to develop, but yeah, so we're moving into now, I think, our third month of people giving. So still very much early days, I would say. And we do work with a couple of homelessness charities, actually, Janice. So I mean, we can't give you any specifics about how their service is working, but we can talk more generally to you if that is useful. Great. Well, thank you very much again for joining us this morning. And for those that we said we would follow up with, we will be in touch.